Hello and welcome to chapter 32. We are getting ever closer to the end of our journey, and thank you for joining me once again. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, notification bell as we're getting to the final stages here. So let us move forward. So we know that Lockwood wanted to return to London. He wasn't asking for his money back from Heathcliff, so he's fed up. He's going back to London. But then we skip forward. The narrative skips forward because it's now 1802. So if you remember, right at the start of the novel, it opened in 1801, and we have Lockwood has been back to London, and then we don't know a lot about this, but it says this September I was invited to devastate the moors of a friend in the north. I don't think this means that he's necessarily going to be smashing everything up Hulk style, even though again it's fun to imagine that. But the key takeaway is that he's got business in the north, and well, I say business, it's probably visiting a friend. And on my journey to this abode, I unexpectedly came within 50 miles of Gimmerton. So he's been away and he's come back, he's near the area, and he thinks, well, I might as well pop in and see what's going on, because he's still renting out Thrushcross Grange. So that's why he says, a sudden impulse seized me to visit Thrushcross Grange. So this is all interesting because Bronte's obviously, Lockwood is the outer frame narrator. The narrative has now moved forward, and a few months have gone by, and we will now see how things have changed. So we have the grey church looks greyer and the lonely churchyard lonelier. So this here, we have an example of incrementum, and you could also say polytoton, or it's spelled kind of polypatoton. There's a silent P in the middle. We have grey, greyer, lonely, lonelier. And this is also parallel phrasing as well, actually, looking at it. There's a lot of things going on there with that one, so that's a good bit to look at there, so that's great. So I distinguish a moor sheep cropping the short turf on the graves. So at the gravestones, like nature is kind of bonding with the dead, or the dead are kind of joining to nature. That's how I take that image. In winter, nothing more dreary, in summer, nothing more divine. So antithesis here, than those glens shut in by hills and those bluff, bold swells of heath. So obviously the recurring motif of nature in the novel, and here there's some antithesis as well. Lockwood has, again, he's returned. He's definitely a bit different to how he was. So his experiences, being ill, the stories of everything that's happened at Wuthering Heights. This looks to me, Bronte is making it clear that he has an appreciation of the area and nature and the area around Gimmerton and the moors, and he's got a bit more of an understanding about it, I think. In some ways, he's seen the seasons pass by himself, so he's got a bit more of an understanding than he did earlier on. So he makes his way he goes up to Thrushcross Grange, but there's no one, well, not Nelly there, that's what you're looking for. Nelly, there are people there, but there's some other servants who are pretty much as incomprehensible as Joseph. Is like a female version of Joseph in some ways, completely incomprehensible. But he's arrived, he's still renting the place, so they can put him up for the night and he can stay there. Wuthering Heights was the goal of my proposed excursion. An afterthought brought me back when I had quitted the court. All well at the Heights? I inquired of the woman. If we're out in she answered, scurrying away the pan of hot cinders. So these aren't like the A1 servants that Lockwood would probably be used to, and not even as friendly as Nelly as well. So there's more nature imagery because of the glow of a sinking sun behind and the mild glory of a rising moon in front. So there's more antithesis here as well. One fading, the other brightening, so that's even more antithesis. But I think this is the idea of times changing and the sense of seasons and the sense of there's a kind of cyclical nature of time. There's a pattern to time, and we will see some of that echoed in the relationships we see in a minute, actually, when Lockwood arrives at the Heights. Before I arrived in sight of it all that remained of day was a beamless amber light along the west, and I could see every pebble on the path and every blade of grass by that splendid moon. This is very much a romantic idea of seeing the beauty in nature in tiny things, isn't it? Or at least a sense of he's seeing like every pebble on the path. He can see every blade of grass by that splendid moon. That's very romantic, as in romanticism, as in that appreciation of nature and a spiritual, uplifting quality of nature. Then he gets to Wuthering Heights. We've had things about the imagery of doors, gates, windows. I had neither to climb the gate nor to knock. It yielded to my hand. That is an improvement, I thought. So things have got better. He can actually, this is symbolic as well, he's actually able to get into Wuthering Heights. So definitely there's a sign here. Bronte's making it clear things have really changed. And I noticed another, by the aid of nostrils, a fragrance of stocks and wallflowers wafted on the air from amongst the homely fruit trees. So there's a fragrance about the place that suggests there's cultivation in the garden, and things have definitely changed here at Wuthering Heights. Even this, both doors and lattices were open, so the windows, again, Wuthering Heights is now open more to nature. It's not as closed off, so something big has changed here. And Lockwood hears two people talking. Contrary, said a voice as sweet as a silver bell. So simile there as well. This is young Catherine and Hareton, where she's teaching him to read. Contrary then, answered another in deep but softened tones, and now kiss me for minding so well. No, read it over first correctly without a single mistake. So this is Lockwood's definitely walked in on something here. Catherine rewards Hareton when he gets his reading right with kisses, and there has been this recurring motif of books. We talked about it last time as well, the idea of books and learning and freedom, and in this case, books is bringing Hareton, or has brought by this point, Hareton and Catherine together. The male speaker began to read. He was a young man, respectably dressed and seated at a table, having a book before him. So this is actually Hareton, and he's changed as well. So the Heights has changed, he's changed as well. Then Lockwood, I think he's still deluding himself here. He notices how beautiful Catherine is, and I bit my lip in spite at having thrown away the chance I might have had of doing something besides staring at its smiting beauty. Lockwood, were you ever really in with a chance? I don't think so, considering how bad things got for Catherine. I don't think she ever really entertained the idea of going off with Lockwood. But like we saw at the start of the novel, I think he's got a heightened sense of maybe his own attractiveness and his own allure. The task was done, not free from further blunders, but the pupil claimed a reward and received at least 5 kisses, which, however, he generously returned. So I feel like we should really maybe cut to playing Careless Whisper here, but I won't because I don't want to upset YouTube. But you'll have to imagine it yourself. So I from their conversation, I judged they were about to issue out and have a walk on the moors. I supposed I should be condemned in Hareton Earnshaw's heart, if not by his mouth, to the lowest pit in the infernal regions. He'd imagine that Hareton would tell him to go to hell if he interrupts the idea of Catherine and Hareton going off onto the moors together. It's interesting that I accidentally almost said Catherine and Heathcliff there, because with Hareton and young Catherine, time is repeating itself, and I said that earlier on about the idea of the seasons and the cycle of time and the cycle of day and night and the seasons. Here you've got Hareton and Catherine now going out on the moors together, apparently in love, and so this echoes the Heathcliff and Catherine situation earlier on. So Bronte's deliberately done this because it recalls that relationship as well. Then Nelly is here. She's up at the Heights and she finds him there, and miserable old Joseph. I just highlighted this because it's just typical of miserable old Joseph. Nelly singing a nice song called Fairy Annie's Wedding, and miserable old Joseph thinks it's unholy to be doing such a thing. So Nelly's surprised by Lockwood's reappearance, but look, this is the really big point. I look surprised. Have you not heard of Heathcliff's death, I see, she continued, because Lockwood says, I need to settle things up with my landlord, and she said, well, he's dead. Heathcliff dead? I exclaimed, astonished. How long ago? 3 months since. So we now get a return to the framing mechanism where Lockwood is going to be told everything that's happened in the time that he's been away. Heathcliff's, afterwards she furnished me with a sequel of Heathcliff's history. He had a queer end, as she expressed it. So there's more mystery set up. So just at the start of the novel, where there was a sense of who is Heathcliff, how come he owns these houses, why is he so miserable, who is he? Now we've got intrigue about his death. His death is strange as well. Then we have an account of Catherine's confinement. So she was forbidden to move out of the garden. It fretted her sadly to be confined to its narrow bounds as spring drew on. For another, in following the house, I was forced to quit her frequently. So this is the account of these past few months. So Heathcliff is imprisoned, I remember, in classic Gothic villain style. So Nelly is now telling the story. And wait, there's something else I was going to say, I think. Oh yes, that was it. It was also, I didn't highlight it, that's why I couldn't find it, that Nelly, once Lockwood's out of the way, shortly after, Nelly finds herself summoned up to work at Wuthering Heights. So she's pleased because she could be with Catherine again. So we have, what I was going to say, and I forgot that. Then a lot of this account of this first bit is how Catherine and Hareton get closer, really, how they go from animosity to affection. So there's imagery here of the idea and him being like a dog. We've said like dog imagery before. Hareton will spend his evening just sort of staring dumbly into the fire, or he's like a cart horse. So there's lots of animal references in the novel as well. He does his work, eats his food, and sleeps eternally. What a blank, dreary mind you must have. Do you ever dream, Hareton? And if you do, what is it about? But you can't speak to me. He began to teach himself to read once, and because I laughed, he burned his books, and I dropped it. Was he not a fool? Were you not naughty? I said. Answer me that. So Nelly, actually, again, Nelly has, for various characters within the novel, acted as a mother figure, and she's been absent from Catherine, and it's interesting again to see that Catherine, she starts to behave better thanks to Nelly's influence. Nelly has a kind of maternal influence on her as well. So she kind of makes us see the error of her ways there. And there is this idea that he's going to learn to read again. He's resistant at first. When Hareton was there, she generally paused in an interesting part and left the book lying about. That she did repeatedly, but he was obstinate as a mule, and instead of snatching at her bait in wet weather, he took to smoking with Joseph. Wow, he must be desperate. Catherine, to try and encourage him to read, would read out loud, stop at a really interesting bit to try and then leave the book so he would try and read the rest of it. Good idea, actually. But yeah, he must be so he must be so reluctant to do it. He's prepared to sit and smoke with Joseph. Well, that's a fun evening, I'm sure. Mr. Heathcliff, who grew more and more disinclined to society, had almost banished Earnshaw from his apartment. So you don't see much of Heathcliff in this chapter. He's referred to at this point in this flashback. He is still alive, but he's just very withdrawn. He's withdrawing from everybody. This is a weird bit. I'd completely forgotten about this. Owing to an accident at the commencement of March, he became for some days a fixture in the kitchen. This is Hareton. His gun burst out while on the hills by himself. A splinter cut his arm, and he lost a good deal of blood before he could reach home. So there's an injury. There's an injury with his gun, and that forces him to sit at home and recover. If you're taking a kind of Freudian angle on this, you could say the gun. There is a bit of phallic imagery going on here. Maybe it's the idea of Hareton's gun explodes, and there, as he's injured, he has to connect to a more feminine aspect of his personality, as in not the masculine side, which is obviously he's been aggressive, he's swearing, he's violent. He has to recuperate, so he then responds to the more kind of female sphere of education and learning and reading of Catherine. I could be going too far with that, but if you don't like it, don't worry, I'm not offended. You can disagree with me. It's just an idea. I think it's quite fun, but you can ignore it. Don't worry, I'm not offended. So then we have she's managed to entertain herself by drawing pictures on the window panes. You've got to have a hobby, especially at Wuthering Heights where there's not much to do. Varying amusement by smothered bursts of song, so she's singing and drawing. I found out, Hareton, that I want. Then I'm glad that I should like you to be my cousin now, if you had not grown so cross to me and so rough. So there is a kind of reconciliation here, and she's realises that she's she's not been great. She's not been nice, has she herself? She doesn't like Hareton smoking, so this is quite a fun image. She takes the pipe out of his mouth and snaps it. Will you go to the devil, he exclaimed ferociously, and let me be? No, she persisted, I won't. I can't tell you what to do to make you talk to me. You're determined not to understand. When I call you stupid, I don't mean anything. I don't mean that I despise you. Come, you shall take notice of me, Hareton. You are my cousin, and you shall own me. Okay, so there you are. So the cousins are getting closer. I shall have naught to do with you and your mucky pride. That's good. Mucky pride. And your damned mocking tricks. I'll go to hell, body and soul, before I look sideways after you again. Side out to gate now, this minute. So their relationship has a rocky start. But again, look, Nelly doing her maternal role. You should be friends with your cousin, Mr. Hareton, I interrupted, since she repents of her sauciness. So what Bronte's done here is obviously there's a very unconventional depiction of Christianity and Christian ideas and Christian morals in the novel, but here we have at least maybe one aspect of Christianity here, which is about forgiveness and redemption, and the idea of Catherine is now genuinely sorry for how she's treated Hareton. She's explained it, she's apologised for it, and Nelly said, well, in all good grace, you should accept that apology and move on. So this is you. If you're arguing the other side of it, this is maybe it's not kind of strictly kind of conventionally religious, and then it's linking to the kind of teachings of Christianity overtly. But I think it's safe to say that there is an element of that here, and it's definitely a change from what we've seen elsewhere. It is not I who hate you; it is you who hate me. And this is an example of antimetaboly, or you might prefer chiasmus, actually, when you've got this cross structure. But either would work in this context. But again, it's to say Catherine is changed, she's improving. Now it's for Hareton's turn to actually improve. He needs to get out of this terrible dissatisfaction and anger that he's got. You're a damn liar, began Earnshaw. Why have I made him angry by taking your part then 100 times, and that when you steered it and despised me and go on plaguing me, I'll step in yonder and say, Yon worried me out of the kitchen. Sorry, you, not Yon. I didn't know you took my part. That means that Hareton says, well, actually, I have defended you against Heathcliff. So for Catherine, that's obviously quite romantic, isn't it? He's defending her and defending her honour, and he's been doing that, but she didn't necessarily realise. So she's crying here. She has genuine tears because I beg you to forgive me. What can I do besides? She returned to the hearth and frankly extended her hand. He blackened and scowled like a thundercloud and kept his fists resolutely clenched. So there's more nature imagery here. This is reinforcing his mood and his anger. But at this point, again, Catherine showing like real forgiveness. By instinct must have divined it was obdurate perversity and not dislike that prompted this dogged conduct, for after remaining an instant undecided, she stooped and impressed on his cheek a gentle kiss. The little rogue thought I'd not seen her, and drawing back she took her former station by the window quite demurely, as if she's all sweetness, basically. I shook my head reprovingly, and then she blushed and whispered, well, what should I have done, Ellen? We didn't shake hands, he wouldn't look, but I must show in some way that I like him, that I want to be friends. Yeah, I think he'll get the idea now. So things actually do change after this point, and he's given a present, he's given a book. She gives him a book as a present, which is nice. And you'll be my friend, added Catherine interrogatively. Nay, you'll be ashamed of me every day of your life, he answered her. The more ashamed, the more you know me, and I cannot bide it. So you won't be my friend, she said, smiling as sweet as honey and creeping close up. Despite my terrible reading of it there, she is meant to be sincere, I think. I overheard no further distinguishable talk, but on looking round again I perceived two such radiant countenances bent over the page of the accepted book that I did not doubt the treaty had been ratified on both sides, and the enemies were thenceforth sworn allies. So there's more antithesis there. Enemies and allies. The idea now they're united. Again, the symbolism of books. Books reading, that's brought Catherine and Hareton together here as well. In a way, really, that reading and books didn't bring Hareton and Catherine together. Actually, it's a different. So this is where Catherine combines the best qualities of the Earnshaws and the Lintons she's got in her DNA. Even though Bronte wouldn't obviously use a term like that, but within that, she's got all the best qualities. So the literary ways of Edgar Linton. She's got the passion for nature, but she's good in a way that her mother wasn't. She is still emotional. She's emotional. She can be very snappy. Obviously, she can be rude and impolite, but essentially, she is better really when you overall. And also, she's also sought reconciliation, and again, that's not really something that Catherine, I think, would really want to do, would she? The older Catherine. Hareton and I will leave this book upon the chimney piece, and I'll bring some more tomorrow. Only books that you leave I shall take into the haste, said Joseph. It'll be Mitch if you find 'em again, so you may please yourself. So Joseph wants to ruin their fun, take away the books. But Cathy threatened that his library should pay for her, so she's basically saying, yeah, well, if you do that, I'll get rid of your books, so don't. And smiling as she passed Hareton, went singing upstairs, lighter of heart, I venture to say, than ever she had been under that roof before, except perhaps during her earliest visits to Linton. A reference to Wonder Wimp himself. Yeah. The intimacy thus commenced grew rapidly. It started with a kiss. Never thought it would come to this. Oh, sorry. I did say I wasn't going to sing, didn't I? I'm sorry. Then, you see, Mr. Lockwood, it was easy enough to win Mrs. Heathcliff's heart, but now I'm glad you did not try. The crown of all my wishes will be the union of those two. I shall envy no one on their wedding day. There won't be a happier woman than myself in England. So this part of the novel now, we can be quite optimistic because we know Heathcliff's dead. There looks to be like a nature and a natural equilibrium is being restored to Wuthering Heights. And Nelly is happy the idea of they're going to get married. So it's all going quite well. So we still don't know what's happened to Heathcliff though, so don't go away. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, notification bell. Thank you if you have done already. Thank you if you've listened to all the other videos as well. It's very good. Thank you very much. And I will see you on the next one. Have a great day or night, whatever you're doing. Goodbye.